Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.
Hello and good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from news about Desawe and Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on YouTube, as well as on X. We're live all across the world on 3news.com, on DSTV channel 279. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, we'll profile the newly nominated Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, Justice Paul Bafo-Boni, whose name has been submitted to the Council of State by the President, John Dramani Mahama, as a replacement or a nominee to fill substantively that position of the Chief Justice. We'll tell you the reactions of especially some persons within the judiciary on this development. Stay with us also here on Ghana Tonight. Speaking of the Gertrude Arba Esabatokono, the former Chief Justice, her case has been forwarded to the Supreme Court by the Attorney General for interpretation of some parts of her judicial review. Now, she's seeking to stop her removal as a Justice of the Supreme Court. The Attorney General is of the view that that borders on interpretation, which is within the merits of the Supreme Court to decide. Stay with us also. The race for the new Patriotic Party's flag-bearer race is gradually taking shape as the party has begun vetting some of the aspirants. We'll delve into their own reactions after the vetting earlier today. As always, an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Connect with us. Let's hear from you. Let's settle for Ghana Brief.
President John Mahama has, in accordance with Article 144, Section 1 of the 1992 Constitution, appointed His Lordship Justice Paul Bafo-Boni as the new Chief Justice following the removal of Gertrude Tokonu for stated misbehavior. His name has, in accordance with law, been submitted to the Council of State for consideration. A statement issued and signed by the Minister of Government Communication Felix Kwachofusu said Justice Bafo-Boni has, throughout his distinguished judicial career, served with diligence and integrity at the High Courts, the Court of Appeal, and currently the Supreme Court. He has made invaluable contributions to the development of Ghanaian jurisprudence. The new Patriotic Party has begun vetting 5 aspirants for its 2028 presidential flag-bearer slot. They include Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, Kennedy Ejapong, Engineer Kwabenai Ejapong, Dr. Brian Echampong, and Dr. Yao Osei Edutrum. The vetting committee will assess their vision, leadership, and integrity ahead of the primaries set for January 31, 2026. Qualified aspirants will be announced on October 8, with ballot positions determined on October 10. The Electoral Commission has declared Professor Alidu Seidu Mahama as the Member of Parliament for the Tamale Central constituency in accordance with CI 127. Professor Alidu Seidu went unopposed after the close of nominations by the Electoral Commission on Sunday, September 21, after a 10-day extension. On Tuesday, September 23, and in accordance with CI 127, the Electoral Commission declared Professor Alidu Seidu Mahama as Member of Parliament-elect for the Tamale Central by-election. 11 West African nationals who had sued the Ghanaian government over alleged unlawful detention have been deported to their home countries despite pending court actions. The group, comprising Nigerians, Togolese, Malians, a Gambian and a Liberian, had filed for an injunction and a writ of habeas corpus. However, their lawyer, Oliver Bakavomawa, withdrew the motions after revealing they were deported over the weekend. He criticized the move as undermining justice, warning it could affect future deportee cases under Ghana's agreement with the U.S. The presiding judge expressed dissatisfaction with the deportation but struck out the case as withdrawn. The committee set up to evaluate DSTV pricing in Ghana has requested an extension of 1 week to complete its work. A release issued by the National Communications Authority said the Minister of Communications has duly granted the extension. The outcome of the committee's work is expected to be presented by September 29. The committee is expected, among others, to achieve a shared understanding of DSTV pricing for Ghana and structured, mutually acceptable and commercially viable measures to address the minister's concerns around the pricing of DSTV service. Parents of some candidates of this year's Basic Education Certificate examination have chastised the computerized school selection placement system for failing to place the awards in their preferred schools despite securing excellent grades.
She's 15. The school she chose, they didn't even give her one. They sent her to Ho as a day student. I mean, a 15-year-old child cannot be on her own. And I can't leave that child to live there vulnerably.
Me base onya grade 10. Mama for a C school 4th choice. But na ko to Kumasi echi.
My child had aggregate 10 and was given his 4th choice in the Ashanti region. The process is frustrating.
Me choose St. John's. I want to say in the grade in the 10 no St. John's onya.
And you'll be an a boarding school. It was send a madenu. At least onya day back.
Not every parent wants a boarding school. At least our children must be placed in their preferred choice.
As more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7. Also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on YouTube, and on 3 News as well on YouTube and on X. You can connect with us always. Probably brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior. Sasso Insecticide Spray and Call Tum Preko. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. As you may rarely be aware, the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, has, in accordance with Article 1441 of the 1992 Constitution, nominated for the appointment of the Chief Justice, Lordship, His Lordship Justice Paul Bafo-Boni, following the removal of Gertrude Araba Isaba Tukono from office for stated misbehavior. His name has, in accordance with law, been submitted to the Council of State for consideration. Now, here's the man that we're talking about, and the President Mahama earlier in the day, in accordance with Article 1441 of the 1992 Constitution. I'm going to show you portions of the letter that was issued and signed by the Minister in charge of Government Communications, Phyllis Kwachofosu. But this statement issued earlier today named Justice Bafo-Boni as the nominee for the substantive position of the Chief Justice. He's been acting for quite a while now. Throughout his distinguished judicial career, served with diligence and integrity at the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and currently the Supreme Court. Now, he has made invaluable contributions to the development of jurisprudence in Ghana and essentially the justice delivery system in this country. Reference has been made to a number of his cases that he also sat on and also participated. His reasoning and ruling on very crucial matters in this country, including the election petitions regarding the 2012 elections petition and the position that he took. In fact, that's one that as well has been referenced, especially because of the numbers game and that particular decision that was taken by the Supreme Court at the time. Now, this is what was contained in the letter that was issued by the presidency earlier today, giving details of his nomination. Now, based on what we do know, so far, there has been some reactions to this particular nomination and the decision that has been taken by the president and what is happening right now. And shortly, we will be connecting with Martin Pebo, who is private legal practitioner, and we would get a bit more reactions to this here on Ghana Tonight. We'll give some more updates on this. And Justice Bafo-Bonny has, throughout his distinguished judicial career, served with diligence and integrity at the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and currently the Supreme Court. And he, according to the statement earlier today, has made invaluable contributions to the development of the Ghanaian jurisprudence. He has earned the esteem of the bench, the bar, and the wider legal fraternity for his intellect, impartiality, and unwavering commitment to justice. His wealth of experience and long service on the bench renders him eminently qualified for the High Court, for the High Office of Justice that's the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. His Lordship has been serving as Acting Chief Justice since the 22nd of April 2025, as I indicated earlier. And this is essentially the details of the statement that was issued by Phyllis Kwachofosu, giving details of the consideration on what exactly led to the nomination of His Lordship Justice Paul Bafo-Bonny as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. Article 1441 spells out the full details of how the process will play out right from now, and we'll get into it shortly. But let's go on to Zoom now. Martin Pebo is private legal practitioner. He's joining us right now. Counsel, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. You're one of quite a number of persons who stuck out their neck to advocate and in fact appeal to the president to confirm Justice Paul Bafo-Bonny as the substantive Chief Justice after having acted since April till now. What exactly informed that conviction that you have? Because now he's been nominated for that position as substantive Chief Justice. Okay.
A number of reasons. One, you look at the seniority. You see that one of the issues, even though it's not part of the petitions, one of the issues with the appointment of Justice Tokonu was that she had a lot of seniors, you see, ahead of her, the Supreme Court. And all of these were bypassed and she was appointed like, is that Joseph in the Bible, right? She was down in terms of seniority. Like the way Joseph was very young, yes, but yet Joseph was anointed, right? So this one, you could see that appointment per se wasn't a problem, but subsequently in relationships on the bench there, you could see there were cracks. You can ask Professor Kweku Asari, he's written about it. You can see there were cracks in terms of, you know, when seniors are around, they've been bypassed and the position is given to a junior person. There's a way you have to manage the seniors. That management wasn't forthcoming. Right. Now, so I'm hoping that with Bafo-Bonny being the senior most, at least he's done more years on the Supreme Court bench, so that experience will reflect on how he would manage his colleagues. Yes, though he's Chief Justice, but the other justices are also Supreme Court justices. So we'll hope that like the management will be better. Yes, that's one of the key things. Then number two, you see that Justice Bafuboni is a Kufuor appointee. That's to say, he was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Kufuor, right? Yes, but if you look at his CV, it was President Rawlings who appointed him to the High Court in the year 2000 or so. Yes, and then President Kufuor took him to the Court of Appeal in 2006, and then in 2008, about a year and a half, then President Kufuor further took him to the Supreme Court. So the point is that when you are analyzing, you would think that because he was appointed by President Kufuor, then he subscribes to the ideologies and the philosophies of the MPP. That's how on paper it's supposed to look like. But now that circumstances have brought us to this level and President Mahama has appointed Bafuboni, it's a huge leap in our march for, people, independent persons to be appointed to very high public offices. You see, I say independent because, as I said, from Bafuboni's appointment by President Kufuor to the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, you can't totally eliminate an argument that he subscribes to the MPP's philosophies and ideology. You can't, because look, from the way the appointments are done, the presidents don't just go around choosing very independent lawyers or judges who don't share anything in common with them. No, the more you share in common with the president, then the easier it will be for him to appoint you. And they hope that because you share the same philosophies and ideologies, if there's anything going wrong with the philosophies and ideologies that are being implemented and it comes to court, because you subscribe, it will be easier for you to understand the Attorney General than somebody who doesn't subscribe to the philosophies and ideologies of the ruling party. I mean, it's as plain as that. Okay, so for President Mahama to overlook all of this, because remember that President Mahama has an appointee on the Supreme Court bench. That's Justice Scott Puaman, right? Yet President Mahama didn't say, no. Let me go and give it to my appointee. President Mahama says, no, let it go to the senior most. It doesn't matter that he was appointed by, President Kufuor. Then also, I'm also more excited because don't forget that that's my third reason. Justice Bafuboni has been punished and punished over and over by President Kufuor because in the election 2012 petition, Bafuboni, even though he was a Kufuor appointee, voted for President Mahama on the critical issue of whether, without the signature of a presiding officer, the votes could be counted. I mean, that's taken into consideration, for those polling stations, etc., where the presiding officer didn't sign. And that was critical, extremely critical. On that vote, it was by 5-4. So President Mahama won it by a slim majority, 5 in favor, 4 against. And by some of the calculations, they were hoping that because Bafuboni is a Kufuor appointee, meaning that he subscribes to the MPP ideologies and philosophies, he would vote for Akufo-Addo, but it didn't turn out that way. And so when Akufo-Addo came into office, he really ostracized Bafuboni. Bafuboni was hounded left, right, center. Bafuboni was hounded left, right, center. They told him to resign, get out of that office, give me the seat. Give me the seat, get out, But somehow he survived it. And see, today, he's on his way to becoming substantive Chief Justice. So these are 3 reasons that make his appointment very exciting. So at least by voting for President Mahama, even though he was a Kufuor appointee during the election 2012 petition, Bafuboni had shown that independence of judgment, that independence that we are always clamoring for in public office. That look, the fact that a president has appointed you to a certain office doesn't mean that you should just roll over and let him have his way. No, exercise some independence, exercise some, independence to make yourself
in judgment, indeed. But you see, there are three reasons that you outlined, which underlines your conviction about the advocacy to have him confirmed or appointed as a substantive Chief Justice. It is the nomination now. It's going to go through the process as we do know, as enshrined in Article 1441 of the 1992 Constitution. But then one of the three reasons that you referenced is very critical: the seniority at the bench. It's a very crucial issue for you. Even at the bar, seniority is a big deal for you, right? You know, when it comes to matters of appointment, and even when you are referencing each other, you value the seniority at the bench and at the bar. So if that was the case, why was he, I'm talking about Justice Paul Bafo-Bonny, bypassed in previous instances when there was the need to appoint a Chief Justice?
Good. You see, earlier on, I made a point that usually presidents don't tend to appoint people to the Supreme Court if those persons have a very strong track record of independence of judgment. That, no, I'm not doing things on party lines or for parochial reasons. Once a person is showing that he's doing it for the national interest and is not doing the bidding of the person who appointed him or her, usually he's not a good candidate for these offices, because they expect a certain degree of loyalty. Even President Kufuor once said it on national television when he was swearing in some Supreme Court justices. He said, yes, we've given you these positions. You should look for our interests when cases concerning this government come before you. It was, we can pull the tape. You see him say it expressly. It's not in innuendos or, some hidden codes, etc. Very express, right? So with this kind of situation, this kind of track record, the point is very clear that for this kind of appointments, you would usually want a high degree of commonalities, a high degree of confluence that the justices and then the ruling government have a lot in common, so that it will be easier to work together.
Right. But indeed, but then with the commendation that you give to the president for nominating Justice Paul Bafo-Bonny, his lordship, to this position of the substantive Chief Justice, you commend the president for doing that, because you say this is a man who has exhibited some level of independence in thought. You commend Justice Paul Bafo-Bonny for that independence in thought and indeed in the previous instances that you referenced. But then again, you still are of the position that the power to appoint a Chief Justice should be taken away from the president during this period of the constitutional review. That is one issue that you want addressed. That power to appoint a Chief Justice should not remain with the president, even with these commendations that you give. Counsel?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Why is that?
Amending Article 144, Clause 1, and other parts of Article 144 of the Constitution 1992 is something that the plurality or majority of Ghanaians have agreed. You know, that debate has been going on for decades, and right now it's clear that we generally agree that that power should be taken away. H.Kwesi Prempeh, who is chairman of the Constitutional Review Committee, also agrees. You know, he helped the Kenyans to draft their current constitution, where in Kenya, no, it's not just the president's power. The vacancies are announced, people are apply. Then there's a vetting on air. Vetting is telecast live, so that there's an independent panel that will score the applicants, etc. And it's done for everybody to see. So at the end of the day, the best is chosen, and then the appointment process goes on. So you see that H.Kwesi Prempeh, having helped the Kenyans to develop such a far more independent procedure, is more likely to do the same for us. Otherwise, if he doesn't have at least what he helped the Kenyans to do in his report, that would be grounds for us to reject the report, because it will be like, Massa, You did something for the Kenyans, and then when it came to Ghana, you want us to stay in this lopsided constitution, this constitution that is a huge stumbling block to our development. No. So generally, if you gauge the way we've had the debates over all these decades, we are ready to take away the power from the president.
Right on. Lawyer Martin, we appreciate you for this, and thank you. If you can kindly stay with me, and we're going to the next matter. But then again, just a brief profile of the man we're talking about, the nominated Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, is also Paul Bafo Boni. We're going to put just a brief of his profile on the screen. Born December 26, 1956. He has had a distinguished career serving in various capacities across Ghana's judicial system, culminating his appointment as a Justice of the Supreme Court of Ghana 17 years ago. This was sometime in 2008. The position is held till this moment. So if you hear Lawyer Martin Kpebu reference that the former President John Agyekum Kufuor appointed him, yes, that's the case. Sometime in 2008, for the past 17 years, he has been serving as a Justice of the Supreme Court. Previously served as a Justice of the Court of Appeal and a High Court and a Circuit Court judge before joining the bench in 1992. He worked as a Principal Inspector of Taxes and Head of Legal, Eastern and Volta regions of the Internal Revenue Service, now the Ghana Revenue Authority, as IRS. Before then, also a Deputy Superintendent of Prisons, Head of Legal at the Prison Service Headquarters, graduate of the University of Ghana in the Ghana School of Law. Justice Paul Bafo Boni had a secondary education at Konongo Dumase Secondary School, where he obtained O and A-level certificates. And currently, he chairs the Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Council, the Election Management Committee of the Judicial Service, and the Finance Committee of the Judicial Service as well. Now, this is a man that, for many who followed his work, has a lot up his sleeve when it comes to the contribution to our the development of our justice delivery system in this country. That's the man we're talking about. We'll see how the process plays out in the coming days regarding Article 1441 of the 1992 Constitution, now that he has been nominated for that substantive position of the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. Let's stay on the matters of law still. This time around, that's coming up next. The Attorney General, as Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Yene says, the case filed by the former Chief Justice Gertrude Araba Tokono at the High Court raises questions of interpretation, which can only be resolved by the Supreme Court of the Republic of Ghana. That is what the Attorney General is saying right now. And for that matter, he is headed to the Supreme Court for that particular purpose. Now, let's just refresh our minds. Exactly what are these reliefs that the former Chief Justice is seeking in this application that we ran through last week? And our senior legal affairs correspondent, Joseph Akable, is going to be joining us shortly. He's been combing through this latest move by the Attorney General to the Supreme Court. These are some of the reliefs that the former Chief Justice is seeking. A declaration that the jurisdiction to hear a petition for the removal of a Justice of the Superior Court from office lies with a body properly constituted under Article 1464 of the 1992 Constitution. She wants a declaration that the warrant of removal executed by the President, dated 1st September 2025, purporting to remove the applicant hearing from both the office of the Chief Justice and the office of a Justice of the Superior Court of Judicature, is unlawful, null, void, and of no effect. So what exactly is the Attorney General now seeking at the Supreme Court? Joseph Akable is a senior legal affairs correspondent, joining me on Zoom right now. Joseph, now you've seen the exact questions that the Attorney General is asking of the Supreme Court. What exactly is it all about?
So, Alfred, I mean, the first point to make is that, the Chief Judicial Review action at the High Court asked the High Court to push the warrant of removal
Okay, Joseph, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. I lost you briefly. If you make that point again as to exactly what the Attorney General is asking of the Supreme Court right now.
I was making a point that at the other time you made reference to the warrant that was signed by His Excellency the President. And in that warrant, you recall the President had said that he was removing her from office as a Chief Justice and Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, that is what the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice, is at the High Court seeking to set that warrant aside, because she holds the view that the petition was sent for her removal as Chief Justice, not as a Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, what the Attorney General has done is to file two processes. The first process is to respond directly to the concerns that are being raised at the High Court. And that process is telling the High Court simply that what the President did in the warrant was simply to apply the law as it is, and as has been explained in various decisions of the court. And so the AG first takes the view that the President is right, that her removal as Chief Justice automatically results in a removal as a Justice of the Supreme Court as well. Then the second process is a request to the High Court. It's what constitutional theorists refer to as the referral jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. An opportunity for the High Court to be asked that the case that has been put before you, it raises questions of interpretation, and so do not deal with the matter, hold on, and refer the matter to the Supreme Court for interpretation. So that is the second process that the Attorney General has filed at the High Court. And they asked the court to refer 3 questions to the Supreme Court for interpretation. The first is whether a person may retain his or her previous judicial office, if any, upon the appointment to the office of the Chief Justice. A very important question, because they want to determine her status when she was appointed as a Chief Justice, because mind you, she was on the Supreme Court bench before she was appointed as Chief Justice. The second question is whether the Chief Justice's membership of the Superior Court of Judicature is ex officio to the office of Chief Justice. Again, we know that the Chief Justice, once you are appointed Chief Justice, you become automatically a member of all the Superior Courts. So the Court of Appeal, the High Court, the Supreme Court. And so the question that is being asked is that, does she acquire that membership of those courts by virtue of her simple appointment as a Supreme Court, as a Chief Justice, or is that not the case? And the final question that they are asking to be referred to the Supreme Court is whether a person may retain his or a membership of the Superior Court of Judicature upon removal from the office of the Chief Justice, which is basically at the center of the controversy that this particular legal case has generated so far.
Right from this moment, there's a decision by the Attorney General. How are the next steps going to be like after this particular question, or these questions the Attorney General is asking of the Supreme Court? What happens next?
It will have to be fixed. And what is unclear at this stage, and potentially because of the 2 processes that have been filed, there is the possibility that the court may consider this notice for the prayer for the reference of the stated questions to the Supreme Court. And so the court would have to definitely fix a date to hear these 2 matters that have been put before it, in terms of the judicial review application by the former Chief Justice, and also the request by the Attorney General's office for the referral to be done to the Supreme Court. And so that would have to be argued at the High Court. And so the High Court can take a decision that, well, we do not think that we should refer the matter to the Supreme Court. Then it would have to answer the question of whether or not the case that has been filed by the Chief Justice leads it to the conclusion that the warrant should be set aside, or the warrant should not be set aside. The court could alternatively also come to the conclusion that, well, as far as it is concerned, it raises questions of interpretation, and so these questions should be referred to the Supreme Court for interpretation. And this such requests are not new. We've seen it happen a number of times in various cases in times past.
Right, and then we're going to follow it every step of the way, and so we'll update our viewers as the days go by on this. I do appreciate you. Thank you so much for this here on Ghana Tonight. And these are the questions that Joseph Akablay, the senior legal affairs correspondent, references that the Attorney General is asking of the Supreme Court. Question number 1 that the Supreme Court should answer: whether a person may retain his or her previous judicial office, if any, upon appointment to the office of the Chief Justice. The second question we're going to put on the screen right now: whether the Chief Justice's membership of the Superior Court of Judicature is ex officio to the office of the Chief Justice. And 3, whether a person may retain his or her membership of the Superior Court of Judicature upon removal from the office of the Chief Justice. The Attorney General is of the view, Lawyer Martin Pebu, I know you're still with me. The Attorney General is of the view that these matters that are within the former Chief Justice's application and the relief she's seeking for this judicial review borders on interpretation, so he's headed to the Supreme Court for interpretation because that is within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Will this move by the Attorney General bring the needed clarity and finality to this matter?
In terms of finality, yes. Yes, finality, no doubt, because, then that would be the hopefully, but we can never be sure. Hopefully the final forum for the Chief Justice to litigate this matter, because there comes a time when litigation must stop. But when it's in terms of clarity, I don't think it adds much. When you read the current cases, it's already clear that, look, when a person is removed as Chief Justice, by implication, that person loses his or her office as a Justice of the Supreme Court. Justice Modibo Okran, one of the Supreme Court justices in the Ejechum case, answered it more directly. That's the language he used. He says, when a person loses his or her office as a Justice of the, as a Chief Justice, that person by implication loses his office, his or her office as a Justice of the Supreme Court. And Modibo Okran didn't just pull that like from a rabbit's, like a rabbit from a hat. No, it wasn't magic. It wasn't magic at all. It's because the plaintiff, Frankie J. Chum, through his lawyers, Kofi Asante and Nana Bedietu Asante, that's Asante Bedietu, that's the Executive Secretary to President Kufuor, had argued it on Saturday. I read it. Maybe we can read it briefly again. It was the plaintiff and the lawyers who argued that point before the Supreme Court answered for them. So for me, it has always been clear when you engage in certain conducts as a Chief Justice, those conducts can also be contrary to your ethics as a Supreme Court judge. That's what that Iban said. I read it on Saturday. I still remember the page 775. So 774 to 775. You find it there. Justice Dateban said certain conducts of a Chief Justice, okay, which are contrary to law, are also conducts of a Supreme Court judge contrary to law. So once that happens, when they are removing that person as a Chief Justice, that person is ipso facto removed as a Supreme Court judge. You don't need a new process. No. So let's come back to the things that are alleged to happen in this case. I like the way Mr. Ocansey on Saturday, you asked one of our panelists. If you look at Article 128, that requires that a Supreme Court judge should have moral, this should not suffer moral turpitude, etc., should have high integrity, etc. The things that have been proven against Chief Justice Stockholm, are they things that a Supreme Court judge will be allowed to do and stay in office? Are they things that a Supreme Court judge will be allowed to do and stay in office? So let's be specific. That matter of signing per diem, signing for per diem and giving to the daughter $10,000, which even today is at least about 120, at least 12. I know now the CD dollar ratio there is going to 12, 13, right? Even if we put it at 12, that's 120,000. Even if we put it at the lowest, when this government came, the CD regained its strength, that's the dollar depreciated. So at a point, we're doing about 10.5. Even if we did 10.5, that would be 105,000. That's a lot of money for per diem, which is contrary to Article 71.
And it's one that we'll keep an eye on as well and see how things play out. Joseph Akablay, Lord Edwasari, they're heavy on this matter as it plays out in court. So stay with us here on TV3 and across all media journal platforms. We'll give you a lot more updates on this in the coming days. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, the vetting process has officially begun for presidential aspirants for the New Patriotic Party, former Vice President and former flag bearer of the NPP in the 2024 elections, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and the former Member of Parliament for Asin Central, Kennedy Ohen Japan, were vetted earlier today at the party headquarters. They both had their experiences shared as well with the media. And this is what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia said after the vetting earlier today. Take a look.
Let me just take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here As you know, I have just been in front of our vetting committee, and we have had very fruitful discussions. They've asked many questions, and I have answered those questions. So I'm very satisfied with my vetting, and I pray that everything is okay. I hope the committee is just as satisfied as I am. I think they will be. But I am very thankful to all of them for making the time to wait for us. I want to thank the rank and file of the party, and I think from vetting we are entering the country to campaign. We are not taking anything for granted. We have to campaign very hard, sell our ideas, and sell the MPP so that we can secure this nomination and then proceed for the 2028 election. I want to thank all of you very, very much.
As Dr. Mahmoud Bamia, the Kennedy in Japan as well, spoke to the media after his vetting earlier today.
The first time you came?
No, not really. You know, I was prepared, so I believe I answered all the questions, and they know I'm ready to be president of this country. Yeah.
What were your major takeaways from today's session?
So they really wanted to know why I want to be president and my vision for the country, as well as the party. So I enumerated a couple of points on how I'm going to address some problems. So basically that was the interview. They know I've been through and through party man for so long. So I didn't face any serious questions, or they didn't antagonize me because they know my potential already. But they asked tangible and reasonable, I would say reasonable questions. They were not hostile to me, and I was free to answer their questions.
I imagine you plan to use the Asian model to develop Ghana.
I said it there too. I told them and explained what I mean by Asian model. You know, I have seen some folks. Let me explain further. The Asian model, what they did that time when they decided to compete with Europe and America was that they identified potential talents and potential businessmen and funded their projects like Daewoo, Hyundai, Samsung in Korea, for instance. They made sure.
As Kennedy Japan as well, and these are the members of the vetting committee that they both appeared before them, and the other three in the coming days would also appear before this vetting committee. This is chaired by the former Defense Minister, Dr. Kwame Adokofor. That's a brother of the former President, John Ajikun Kufuor, and the former MP for Menchia constituency. You have other members of this vetting committee of the MPP. You see Frank Davis in the picture there. You see the Honorable Obiamo as well. You see Hackman Oswajiman. You see Lord Comey is in there. You have also Madam Elizabeth Ohen as well in there. And you have some national executives of the party lined up in there as well. So we'll see how the coming days will be like on this. But this is one to keep an eye on. We'll be updating you, but this is Ghana Tonight. Right after this quick break, we go straight to New York. Fresh on the plate right now, the President, John Dramani Mahama, just addressed a gathering on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations General Assembly. Komla Kloche is connecting with us from New York live after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on YouTube. And just a few minutes ago, the President, John Dramani Mahama, addressed a gathering at the United Nations General Assembly, the 80th session ongoing in New York as we speak. And this is what the President had to say specific about matters related to Ghana's position on issues of development and also advancing Ghana's democracy. This is what the President has to take a look at this. And we'll connect to Kamala Kluche shortly. Take a look.
Health will be our first ground of experimentation, but the lessons learned will be shared across all sectors, from climate resilience to nutrition to empowerment of our economies. In doing so, we'll drive sector strategy labs and pioneer the spirit of workability. We're discussing geostrategic deal rooms to facilitate risk sharing, investment in health, climate, food security, and job creation. But our mission goes further. It will help shape the post-SDG agenda. The world is only 5 years away from 2030. And the question is not simply what new targets should replace the SDGs, but how we design institutions and financing systems that can actually deliver. This means thinking outside the box, about new and innovative financing instruments, about fresh business models, and about smarter coalitions that multiply rather than ration resources. The Presidential Council and the high-level panel will help the world confront big questions. How do we govern in a poly-crisis era, where shocks are a permanent feature of our daily lives? How do we unlock trillions in climate finance without drowning countries in debt? How do we turn sovereignty into a multiplier of value rather than a barrier to cooperation? These are the challenges that the Accra Reset seeks to address, and the eminent minds and hearts gathered here today will be the driving force behind creating designs and executing solutions. I want to take the opportunity to thank the many leaders in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, as well as our partners in the West, alongside business leaders, global multilateral institutions who have already welcomed this initiative and are collaborating to make it a success. Their support affirms that the reset is not only African in its origins, but global in its reach and its relevance. It is indeed right that the Global South should take the lead, for it is in our countries that the collapse of the old world model will be felt most acutely.
That's the President, John Dramani Mahama there. Let's cross over live to New York right now. And our presidential affairs correspondent, Kamala Kluche, who is traveling with the Ghanaian contingent, the president as well there. And in fact, he's been monitoring day one, the opening of the UN General Assembly, the 80th session earlier today, plus what you just heard. An event on the sidelines that the president just spoke at. Kamala, appreciate you connecting with us. A busy day for you, the opening today. Let's start off with the opening and the position of the host president, Donald Trump, on the United Nations, essentially. Let's get into that.
Well, I mean, quite expected. Many were expecting some fire from Donald Trump, and of course, it delivered just the way people expected him to. And it wasn't quite surprising, even shortly after it was done, virtually the place became quite almost empty dome. And we tried getting reactions from some of the delegates. It was quite difficult getting reactions. Many of them did not want to speak on the matter, even though quite a few of them later on, we had to speak to them. But, I mean, he told the United Nations straight in the face what we have been wrong about the institution, and to the extent that even he had to narrow it down to a faulty escalator and also a teleprompter. But then the bigger picture has to do with the fact that Donald Trump thinks that the position of the United Nations in its budgetary allocation favors the influx of illegal immigrants into the United States and also Western countries for the shore.
I see. Now it's a very combative position that he took, and just how was the reaction in the room like when he took a dig at the United Nations?
Well, he received some amount of applause, but this applause was not as loud as compared to the previous years of other heads of state of the United States. And the applause, surprisingly, I mean, we are not even able to tell who gave that applause, but it was on the low key, I must admit. And the description in the U.S. media across right here in the United States has been how Donald Trump has been able to tell the United States straight in the face has been able to tell the United Nations straight in the face what many think was needless, and also giving a task unjustifiably on the United Nations. The position of many of them is to the effect that the United Nations has lived to the billing, and no amount of words coming in from Donald Trump would thwart the humanitarian efforts of the United Nations.
And we just had the president there at that event on the sidelines. Tell us a bit more about this particular event and what the president sought to communicate in that short speech we had him give right now.
Well, it was quite a lengthy speech, but for the sake of, the program, we have to just give it just a piece of it. But essentially what the president has been saying, and this is on the back of the Health Sovereignty Summit that he held on the 5th of August in Accra. Now he's brought Accra Reset to New York or to the United States. Look, to be honest with you, the attendance well over 200 people, including heads of state and other former heads of state. General Olusegun Obasanjo was there. The Prime Minister of Barbados was there. We had former Prime Minister of the UK, Gordon Brown, in attendance, and a host of others who believe that yes, it has come to the point where Africa must take its own financing into its own hands. What it also means is that when the Western countries are at the decision point, the President John Mahama is indicating that, and it's not as though he's saying that they should not be considered, but Africa must be at the table. Their voices must be heard. But essentially, because of the cut, the USAID has been cut. Other health infrastructure systems have been cut for countries in Africa. And so the point has come for Africa to look back within and say, how do we finance it? How do we go on our own? And as we are going on our own, we also need to look within how we are able to cut wastage, how we are able to cut off the corruption and the waste that's in the system. So Africa can now be able to assess its own self, because the way forward is to the effect that the world or the Western world can no longer finance the needs of the African continent.
And a very important point there, Kamala. Appreciate you for this. And I know that you're going to be giving us a bit more update in the coming days. Tomorrow is yet another busy day for you, and we'll give updates of how tomorrow play out to our viewers on Ghana Tonight. So we'll connect with you again, Kamala. Great job. Thank you so much. Kamala Kluche is our presidential affairs correspondent. Live from New York, the streets of New York, where the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly is taking place. So stay with us from now till Friday. We'll be giving you daily updates of the UN General Assembly meetings. So stay with us. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. Join us same time tomorrow. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana.